In 1978, the US government secretly set the most cold-blooded political trap on American soil. A fictional Arab billionaire, a fake investment empire, real untraceable cash in a briefcase, and hidden cameras buried inside a Washington, D.C. townhouse. Then quietly invited their own politicians through the door one by one, sliding $50,000 across the table in a paper bag, and watched in silence as some of the most powerful elected officials in the country reached out and took it. This is ABSCAM, and the government did it on purpose. But to understand how it got there, you have to go back to where it all began, the world before the trap. The FBI in the late 1970s was an institution that had been caught with its hands dirty. Illegal surveillance, dirty tactics, abuse of power under J. Edgar Hoover. The Bureau had spent years doing exactly what it was supposed to prevent. By 1978, it was desperately trying to prove it was on the right side of the law, not operating somewhere above it. So a small team inside the FBI's New York field office quietly launched an undercover operation. The goal was modest: recover stolen artwork, track fraudulent securities moving through the criminal underworld. Nothing that would make headlines. But to make it work, they needed someone on the inside, someone who understood how criminals thought, how they talked, how they built trust, someone who could walk into a room of greedy people and make every single one of them believe he was exactly who he said he was. They needed a con man, and the one they found had been training for this moment his entire life without knowing it. The man they should never have trusted. Melvin Weinberg, Bronx-born, December 4th, 1924, a career fraudster who had spent decades running the same beautiful scam. Walk into a room, promise desperate businessmen access to foreign investment money that didn't exist, collect the upfront fee, and vanish before anyone knew what hit them. He was charming, instinctive, and he could read a person's greed like a map. In 1977, the FBI finally caught him. Convicted of fraud, staring down a prison sentence, Weinberg was given a choice: work for us or go to your cell. He didn't even think about it. What the FBI got in return wasn't just an informant. They got 30 years of expertise in exactly one subject: how greed works, how it blinds smart people, how it makes men who should know better believe whatever they desperately want to believe. They handed him a budget, a cover story, and permission to operate. Now they had their weapon. What they needed next was a stage, and what they built was something no one walking into it would ever believe was a lie. The Abdul Enterprises is born. The operation was run by FBI agent John F. Good, directed by Justice Department prosecutor Thomas P. Puccio, and supervised by Neil Welch, head of the FBI's New York field office. The man who would actually sit in the room, shake hands, and slide the money across the table was FBI Special Agent Anthony Amoroso, and the world they built around him was immaculate. They created a fictional company, Abdul Enterprises Limited. Its centerpiece was an equally fictional character, a wealthy Arab sheikh named Kambir Abdul Rahman, flush with Middle Eastern oil money, serious about American investment, and most importantly, desperate to secure permanent residency in the United States, which meant he needed political friends. The operation's name, ABSCAM, came from combining Abdul and scam. To make the sheikh feel real, Weinberg convinced the FBI to open a $1 million account at Chase Manhattan Bank under Abdul Enterprises, real money, a real account, so that anyone who got suspicious and checked would find exactly what they expected. The sheikh was legitimate. The sheikh was serious. The sheikh's actual costume, robes, headdress, bought from a costume shop, $37. The headdress kept sliding down to the agent's shoulders during meetings. Nobody ever noticed, because when there's $1 million in a bank account and $50,000 in cash sitting on the table in front of you, you're not looking at the headdress. They set up their base on Long Island, secured a 65-foot luxury yacht for meetings that needed a grander setting, and installed hidden cameras so precisely concealed that across dozens of meetings with dozens of targets, not one person ever found them. Then they opened the doors. Early targets were small-time criminals, fraudsters, people already living in the gray zones. The operation was producing results, and then one of those targets said something that made the entire FBI go quiet. He said he could get them inside Congress, the mayor who sold the keys to Congress. That man was Angelo Ericetti, mayor of Camden, New Jersey, state senator, a man who wore his corruption like a tailored suit, comfortable, familiar, completely natural. He got pulled into ABSCAM's orbit in late 1978 through a mutual criminal contact, sat down with Weinberg and the undercover agents, and before they could even lay out the pitch, Arricchetti leaned forward and started selling. He could get them Atlantic City casino licenses. He could open port facilities in New Jersey. Regulatory problems? Gone. He rattled it off like a contractor talks about what's included in a quote. And then, without pausing, he looked across the table and said it. "I'll give you Atlantic City." Just like that, like it was nothing. But that wasn't even the moment everything changed. The moment everything changed was what came next, when Arricchetti told them he could personally introduce the Sheikh to sitting members of the United States Congress, men who would quietly sponsor private immigration legislation for a foreign national, in exchange for cash payments. He wasn't speculating. He was describing a service he was confident he could deliver. Amoroso and Weinberg looked at each other. The stolen art, the securities fraud, all of it, suddenly irrelevant. The FBI said yes, and Arricchetti picked up the phone. Those phone calls set off a chain of events that over the next 12 months would produce the most devastating political footage ever recorded on American soil. The paper bag. The room was always the same, a townhouse on W Street, North W, Washington, D.C., quiet block, nothing about the exterior that would make you look twice. But inside, undercover agents, hidden cameras, and a paper bag on the table with $50,000 cash inside it. They came one by one, each brought in separately, none of them knowing the others had already sat in the same room. The pitch never changed. The Sheikh needs help. Private immigration bill, some political cover. In return, something on the table for you. Cash. No paper trail, no contracts. Just take it and walk out. Congressman Michael Myers of Pennsylvania didn't ask a single question, just reached across and took the bag. On tape, he looked the undercover agent dead in the eye and said, "Money talks and bullshit walks," then pocketed the cash and walked out, calm, unhurried, like he'd just finished the routine meeting and was heading to lunch. Congressman John Jenrette didn't hesitate, took the money, later told his own wife, who eventually wrote a tell-all book about him, that he had larceny in his blood. Frank Thompson, Raymond Lederer, John Murphy, one after another, same chair, same bag, same hidden camera, each completely unaware the last man had done the exact same thing. And then came Richard Kelly, congressman from Florida. $25,000 placed in front of him. He took it and then started stuffing bills into his pockets, jacket pockets, trouser pockets, methodically filling every pocket he had while the camera captured every second. Then he looked up and asked the undercover agent with a complete straight face, "Does it show?" He later claimed he'd been running his own private investigation into corruption. A district court overturned his conviction in 1982. An appeals court reversed that in 1984. He served 13 months, but none of them, not Myers, not Jenrette, not Kelly, were the name that stopped Washington. Senator Harrison A. Williams, Jr. of New Jersey, United States Senator since 1959. A unique liberal icon, his name on some of the most important worker protection legislation in American history, the kind of senator people pointed to as proof that government could actually work. He sat down with the Sheikh's men and didn't look cornered, didn't look nervous. He negotiated a deal tied to government contracts tied to a titanium mine in Virginia. And while the cameras rolled, he described his own political influence in careful, specific detail. The access he had, the relationships he could leverage, the doors only he could open. He looked like a man who had done this before, many times before. 31 public officials targeted, 19 convicted, 6 members of the House, 1 United States Senator. The trap had worked beyond anything the FBI had dared to imagine. The day Washington caught fire. February 2nd, 1980, Saturday evening. NBC News broke it. By Sunday morning, it was everywhere. And the reason it hit the way it did, the reason people couldn't look away, was because this wasn't anonymous sources or leaked documents or somebody's word against somebody else's. There were tapes, video footage of sitting United States congressmen taking cash in rooms the federal government had wired without their knowledge. You could watch it happen. Washington didn't just go quiet, it seized. Lawyers called before statements made, and the defense they landed on was entrapment. The FBI invented this entire situation. The Sheikh was fake. The money was government money. These men didn't go looking for corruption. Corruption was built around them. Senator Williams pushed harder, arguing he'd been targeted not for anything he'd actually done, but because he'd backed Ted Kennedy over Jimmy Carter in the Democratic primary. that the Carter Justice Department used ABSCAM to eliminate a political enemy. It was a serious argument, the kind that makes you pause. The courts, however, didn't pause. Every entrapment claim rejected, every time. Nobody was dragged in, nobody was threatened, nobody was tricked into wanting money they didn't already want. Every man who reached into that bag made a free choice to do it. The defense didn't collapse because the law was unsympathetic. It collapsed because the tapes showed exactly what happened, and what happened left no room for a different story. The fall. Congressman Michael Myers. The House voted 376 to 30 to expel him. Not defeated at polls, not forced to resign, expelled. The first sitting member removed from Congress since the Civil War. Congressman John Jenrette, convicted, 2 years, served 13 months. Marriage gone, career gone, everything gone. Congressman Frank Thompson, convicted, 3 years, served 2. Never returned to public life, died in 1989. Congressman Raymond Lederer, convicted, 3 years, somehow won re-election in November 1980 while already under indictment, resigned anyway in April 1981. Congressman John Murphy, convicted on conspiracy, 3 years. Angelo Ericetti, the man who made every phone call that set this whole thing in motion, convicted of bribery and conspiracy, 6 years, served 32 months. And then Senator Harrison Williams, who fought longer than any of them, who maintained his innocence through every appeal, every hearing, every motion, until the Senate itself began preparing a vote that would have thrown him out by force. March 1982, he walked to the Senate floor and resigned. The first U.S. senator forced from office under threat of expulsion since 1905. 23 years in the Senate, 3 years in federal prison. One bathroom bag. The wound that never fully healed. The entire operation cost $800,000. In return, the most significant political corruption convictions in American history. By any measure of law enforcement, an extraordinary success. But the question that followed wasn't about the numbers. It was the harder one. If the government has to build the opportunity for corruption from scratch, invent the Sheikh, the money, the room, the offer, what exactly has it proved? That those specific men were corrupt? Or that corruption is so deeply woven into the fabric of power that almost anyone placed in that room might have done the exact same thing? Nobody ever answered that cleanly. Congress passed new regulations restricting undercover political stings. The era of operations this expansive, this theatrical, this unrestrained was over. But the question ABSCAM planted in the American conscience still open. None of those men walked into that townhouse expecting to get caught. They thought it was just another deal. But this time, the room was watching. The cameras were running. And when it all came out, there was no version of events where the tapes didn't mean exactly what they showed. Because ABSCAM didn't create corruption. It revealed it. If this kind of story is what you're here for, go check out our other videos right now. Every single one hits the same way.